How are you all doing? Welcome to Genomics Genesis. This is me, Mary. So, today today's topic that we are going to talk about is the living world. Before we start with the very first chapter, that is the diversity in living organism, we need to understand few of the terminologies related with the living world. So, without any further delay, let's get started. The first thing that we'll discuss is what is life. Life, which is also known as biota, is unique and comprises of various biological processes that leads to growth, development, responsiveness, adaptation, and reproduction. The next thing that we are going to see is what is living organism. Living organisms are nothing but complex entities made up of cells and exhibits characteristics such as cellular organization, reproduction, metabolism, growth, response to stimulus, adaptation, and homeostasis. The next thing that we are going to discuss about are the properties of living organisms. There are in total seven different properties of a living organisms. They are metabolism, growth, reproduction, cellular organization, adaptation, homeostasis, and response to stimulus. We'll be discussing each of these properties one by one in details in our upcoming slides. We'll also see whether these properties of living organisms can be considered as a defining property of a living organism or not. So, the first thing that we are going to see is what is growth. Growth involves increase in cell number as well as cell mass by cell division. In case of plants, continuous growth occurs throughout their lifespan. This is also known as indefinite or indeterminate growth. In case of animals, growth occurs up to a certain age and after that it stops. However, the lost cells are replaced by cell division. In case of animals, we can consider growth as a determinate or definite growth. Growth is basically increase in mass as well as size. So we can say non-living things can also show growth. Thus, we cannot consider growth as a defining property of living organisms. In case of living organisms, growth is from inside, whereas in case of non-living organisms, growth can be seen from outside. The next thing that we see is reproduction. Reproduction is nothing but a biological process where new, genetically similar individuals known as offsprings are produced by an organism, essential for continuation of the species. Reproduction can be either sexual or asexual. Asexual reproduction involves a single parent and no fusion of genetic material takes place, whereas in case of sexual reproduction it requires genetic material from two parents to create an offspring. Can you give me an example of an animal that shows asexual reproduction and an animal that shows sexual reproduction? You can comment down your answers below. The next thing that we see is in case of unicellular organism, growth and reproduction can be considered as same because they reproduce by cell division. Many organisms such as worker bees, mules do not reproduce. Thus, we cannot consider reproduction as a perfect defining property of living organisms. The next thing that we see is metabolism. Metabolism is nothing but a series of biochemical reactions taking place inside a living organism that helps in converting the food into energy that is further used for carrying out essential vital functions of the body. Metabolism can be considered as a defining feature of a living organism. The next thing that we see is cellular organization. Organisms can be either unicellular, that is made up of single type of cell, or multicellular, made up of various kinds of cells. Cellular organization can be considered as a defining feature of living organisms. Here in the diagram, there are cellular organization of two different organisms are given. Can you identify which one is of a plant cell and which one is of the animal cell? You can comment down your answers below. The next thing that we see is response to stimulus. Response to stimulus is nothing but the ability to sense the environment and respond to the environmental stimuli accordingly. All organisms are aware of the surrounding. Thus, it is a defining property of living organism. Example, when we touch a touch-me-not plant, the leaves of the touch-me-not plant droops down. It is an example of response to stimulus. The second example, whenever we touch a hot plate, we immediately withdraw our hand. This is an example of response to stimulus. The third example, the sunflower always bends towards the direction of the sun. This is also an example of response to stimulus. Do you know more such examples of response to stimulus? Then you can comment down your answers below and let me know. The next thing that we see is adaptation. Adaptation is nothing but a beneficial feature or behavior an organism develops over generations through evolution that increases its chances of survival and reproduction in its environment. The more it adapts itself, the more its chances of survival increases. The organism that adapts itself well with the surrounding have greater chances of survival than the organism that cannot adapt itself with the surrounding and gets extinct. It helps organisms find food, water, mates, and shelter. It occurs over long periods of time. Adaptation can be structural, behavioral, or physiological. The word, that is survival of the fittest, goes well with the word adaptation. The more you adapt well with the surrounding, the more your chances of survival increases. Thus, adaptation and survival are directly proportional to each other. Right? Examples are the thorns in the cactus plant helps it to survive in a drought condition. The thick furs that we see in polar bear helps it to survive in a very cold situation. The long necks of giraffe is also an example of adaptation. The pine trees that we see in the hills is also an example of adaptation. The next thing that we see is homeostasis. Homeostasis is nothing but a process by which a biological system maintains a relatively stable internal environment despite changes in external conditions or internal demand. This self-regulating mechanism ensures the optimal functioning and survival of an organism. For an organism to homeostasis, three important things are necessary. Number one is receptor, second is control center, and third is effector. If any of these three things are not present, then an organism will not show homeostasis. Can you give me an example of an organism that shows homeostasis? You can comment down your answers below and let me know. Now, we know that plants and animals need air, water, and food to live. What can happen when one is missing? You can share your answers below in the comment box and let me know. That's the end of our chapter. Thank you. And before you leave, do not forget to like and share and subscribe my channel that is Genomics Genesis for such videos and amazing contents on biology. Thank you.